Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We begin with our top story this morning. The Russian President Vladimir Putin made a triumphant first visit to Crimea on Friday as the region held its first Victory Day commemoration since it was annexed by Russia 2 months ago. But the gravity of the crisis gripping the rest of Ukraine was underscored by more deadly clashes in the southern city of Mariupol. Of course, yesterday we had the referendum in many of eastern Ukraine, and the first initial results are of self-rule. Overwhelmingly, everyone is voting in favor of self-rule. We're now joined in studio by Channel 2 Foreign Affairs correspondent Asaf Yechazkeli. Good morning, Asaf.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a look at the following report that sums up the weekend's events.
Despite attempts by Ukrainian forces to block vote commissioners, turnout in the referendum on self-rule across Ukraine's southeast was high.
The voting is going really well. People are coming to us like it's a holiday.
According to Luhansk election commissioners and Russian news agencies, more than 85% of the region's polling stations were working, and more than 75% of eligible residents had voted in the referendum. The queues to vote remained long, even though several cars carrying ballots and some polling stations came under attack by Ukrainian government troops.
In 3 regions, even in 4, our commissions aren't able to operate. The cars with ballots and protocols were blocked by the troops, by the National Guard.
Results of the referendum in the 1,527 polling stations of the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk are expected by Monday afternoon, but its outcome will not be widely recognized internationally or by Kiev. Ukrainian leaders have condemned the voting and said they would not negotiate with what they considered are terrorists.
I would like to underline one more time, it's not a referendum, it's a desultory attempt by terrorists, bandits and killers to cover their activity by having citizens vote in Luhansk and Donetsk.
The vote went ahead even though Russian President Vladimir Putin called to postpone it, a move that had raised hopes for an easing of tension. But Western leaders continue to accuse Putin of destabilizing Ukraine, especially criticizing as provocative the recent trip he made to Crimea last Friday. Amid much uncertainty, including polls which indicate a vote in favor of keeping Ukraine united, the pro-Russian separatists believe in their right to establish the People's Republic. In any case, it remains doubtful that tomorrow's results will make any real difference in the widening rupture between the people of Ukraine.
And now joining us is Paula Slyer, the Middle East Bureau Chief for Russia Today. Hi, Paula. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So the latest results that we are hearing is a landslide victory for the pro-Russian separatists. Do you have the latest numbers?
No, we don't have the latest numbers. In fact, we've just heard from Liagan, who is the chairman of the Central Election Commission, saying that there is going to be a delay with the announcement of those results. We're not quite sure why, but we do expect that those results will be announced any hour now. As you say, the expectation on the ground, and certainly what we have been hearing from some of the election officials, is that this is going to be a resounding yes. Just to remind you what that yes means, it's not about a yes to leave Ukraine or a yes to join Russia. There was one question on the ballot pages, and that was whether or not you support the right to self-determination. So that will be the yes that we'll be waiting for and expecting today.
And Paula, many of the Western media that were around the polling stations cited that there were no international observers. They saw some people voting twice, no up-to-date electoral list, and so forth. Are these just some of the conditions that might hinder the results, or does it not really matter at this point as the pro-Russian separatists have made their mark?
I think it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I mean, even some of those observations, firstly, are being disputed by people on the ground. I mean, yes, there might have been some irregularities, but the figures we're being received are that more than 70% of people turned out. And certainly when I visited the voting stations myself, you had a great mood and a great optimism that people were expressing. The kind of wording and the kind of words that people used to me were that this was an historic day, that this was they felt so optimistic about their future. One old man telling me that now his grandson has a chance at a better life than he had. The organizers said that they did invite international observers, but that no one actually responded to that invitation. This was an election that was organized in the space of 5 weeks. There were more than 3 million ballot pages that were printed. But as you correctly say, most of the international community is not going to recognize it, says it's illegal. You certainly have those statements coming out of the Kiev government. And I think the response from the pro-Russians on the ground is that they actually don't really care what the government in Kiev and what many in the international community say, and that any of these accounts of irregularities are just their way to try and spoil what they believe has been a legitimate expression of democracy on the ground.
Paula, stay with us on the line. With me here in studio is Safia Khashkeli, the Channel 2 Foreign Affairs correspondent. Of course, elections did go underway, as we said, maybe not up to Western standards, but also the Ukrainian army was firing live fire against separatists.
And above some of the voters' heads. Let's agree about a few things. Unarguably, there are some people who are seen in the eastern parts of the Ukraine who are eagerly pro-Russian and who want self-rule. Unarguably as well, we wake up this morning to the disrecognition of the whole of the international community of this referendum. It was neither free nor fair, although we saw a lot of voting booths and electoral officials and so on. But I think we should have to look forward. Next week is the more important self-proclaimed referendum of the Ukrainians in the eastern part on the more important question of independence. The same voters we saw today, or we saw yesterday, will go again to the same polling booths next week and will have to decide if they want to separate from Russia. And 2 weeks from now is the Ukrainian national presidential and parliamentary elections, which are the only ones who are recognized to this point by the international community. Will the Eastern Ukrainians vote for independence next week, or will the Eastern Ukrainians boycott the whole of the presidential referendum? These are the two more important questions.
But of course, if we take the standards of the voting aside and put it aside for a second, as you say, we're going to have two different elections almost happening simultaneously. One is considered illegal by the West. One is considered, or at least Russia is pushing this forward. Is this tension between the West and Russia going to only grow? Because so far, Putin has been relatively quiet on the matter.
Relatively quiet since his proclamation last week that he has not, he lost control over the politicians in the eastern parts of the Ukraine. I don't know if we can believe it or not. He might be just pushing the things, the strings behind the curtain. But we will have to see what he says following next week's referendum. If the Ukrainians, the Eastern Ukrainians, will vote overwhelmingly for independence of Ukraine, then it will be his decision time, whether to back it or to disregard it.
We, of course, heard about Merkel and Hollande visiting each. Hollande came to visit Merkel in Germany in the weekend. Also, again, calling or threatening with more sanctions. Besides the sanctions, we haven't really heard much from the West in the past 3 months of the Ukrainian crisis. Can the West up its rhetoric? Can it actually up its policy?
President Obama said he wants to take the prices that Russia is paying higher and higher, but we see that nothing happens. We hear reports about inflation, about the value of the Russian ruble, about downgrading the credit score of Russia, but none of this has real impact on the ground. Chancellor Merkel of Germany is the only one who is now saying strong words, and it is actually very strong words considering her stakes at the Russian economy and Russia's economy stakes in Germany in terms of oil and of gas. But none of this matters until there is a EU summit designated for 2 weeks from now in Brussels, in which they will react to the two coming referendums.
And Paula, you're still with us there from eastern Ukraine. Has the Russian president looked at what Merkel and Hollande are saying, and perhaps looking at the upcoming EU summit with any kind of weariness, or is he set on his track to continue his almost policy of ignoring the West?
Look, I'm not sure people here would say it's necessarily a policy of ignoring the West. They would use different words, but I certainly think that it doesn't matter what is said in Europe. The road ahead is on track here. I mean, as was commented now in the studio, there is a very important vote that will happen next Sunday, and that will be a vote about where to go with this right to self-determination. The important point to make is that the feeling on the ground here is that you have an illegal government in Kiev, and that is a government that is not only illegal, but it's supported and backed by Europe. So any statements, any kind of criticisms that come from Europe are almost laughed at. I mean, there was an offer a few days ago by the Kiev government to sit down and talk with these pro-Russians in the southeast of the country. That offer was rejected, and one of the reasons given was that they don't trust the Kiev government, they don't trust Europe, they certainly don't trust the extremist white factor elements. There was also reports in the media here that they were offered millions of dollars to form a political party. So there's a lot of cynicism here about any kind of comments and statements that come from Europe and the Kiev government. And certainly I was asking some of the leaders here how they feel about the Russian president's suggestion that they postpone the referendum and whether or not they feel betrayed that he made that statement publicly. And the answers I was given was that no, they still see Russia as their friend, they respect the Russian president. So there might be things going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. Certainly Putin's statement on the referendum and that he felt it should be postponed hasn't in any way broken the kind of support that people here feel to Russia. Certainly the feeling is very strong that ultimately they want to be closer to Russia in whatever form that takes.
Okay, Paula, I just want to let Asaf here in studio respond.
Yeah, I would just say that as much as we're looking into the eastern part of the Ukraine, we also have to watch very carefully what is happening on the western part of the border, the Transnistria region, bordering with Moldova, which has a lot of pro-Russians that might be getting some ideas of self-determination following the eastern part.
Copycat regions, as we cynically try to call them here in the media. Safi Chaskari, thank you. Paula Slyer there in eastern Ukraine, thank you both. We're going to speak very shortly. Now on to our next topic. The Israeli police and the Shin Bet, the Israeli Secret Security Service, fear that right-wing extremists may exploit the Pope Francis' visit to the Holy Land at the end of the month to carry out a major hate crime to drum up media attention. We're still joined in studio by the Channel 2 Foreign Affairs correspondent, Asaf Chaskeli. Thank you, Asaf, for staying with us. So we've had a wave of hate crimes in Israel against Christian and Arab targets, which is not, I mean, it's all a matter of timing. They know the Pope is coming by the end of the month, and it has been all around condemned by all, of course, the Israelis, but also by the Vatican.
Yes, well, no major explosions are expected. It will be at the most more graffitis and more hate writings on the walls or on ancient tombs. And as shameful as they might be, there are no major expectations of any violence. It would be on small scale. It will be embarrassing, but let's admit it. Pope Francis has visited numerous countries in the past which had more hate crimes against its own Christian minorities. And the Christians are, of course, not the major victims of these hate crimes. Of course, everything is supposed to raise awareness to the price of the Palestinians paying in the territories, in the settlements. And I would expect the Pope to be very strongly worded about these hate crimes. He will speak about it with the president. He will speak about it with the prime minister. He will speak about it possibly also in his very emotional visit expected in Yad Vashem. There is no place for such hate crimes in modern Israel and in the modern Holy Land. But let's admit it, the situation of the Christians in Syria, in parts of Lebanon, in Jordan, and in other parts of the Middle East is worse than the situation of the Christians in Israel.
Of course, I guess nobody really does expect it happening here in Israel. If you can compare Israel to Syria, the Latin Patriarch in Israel has accused the country's authorities of not doing enough to bring ultranationals' price tag, quote-unquote, price tag perpetrators to justice. The Patriarch said that the price tag attacks contribute to the poisoning of the atmosphere ahead of the Pope's visit. Let's listen in.
There has been a marked increase of price tag provocations within Israel. This wave of extremist actions of terror are surely of grave concern to all reasonable persons. The actions are only drawing condemnation by Israeli leaders, but few arrests. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil if people of goodwill do nothing.
And speaking
very strongly and carefully worded statement, obviously directly coming from the Vatican. And the Patriarch, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, is following the footsteps of his predecessor, Michel Sabah, who also said a lot of these kind of statements and in supporting of the Palestinians.
And another country in uproar over the upcoming visit, of course, is Lebanon, after the Maronite Patriarch had said that he does intend to visit the Holy Land. What his predecessor chose not to do. He went to Jordan instead when Pope John Paul came. This is, of course, an uproar not only because of the Christians in Lebanon, but also because of Hezbollah.
Yes, Hezbollah has warned the Cardinal Bishara Arai from Beirut not to come to Israel, and Hezbollah will watch whether the Cardinal is shaking hands with any Israeli officials. And actually, if he does that, his life will be in danger. But naturally, apart from meeting religious leaders, he will only be a part of the entourage of the group of the Pope, and not any part of the official delegations.
We're also going to be speaking about this extensively in up to the 2 weeks to the Pope's visit. Safi Chaskeri, thank you for joining me this morning. After the break, the Israeli ex-Mossad chief calls the Newsweek spy story, quote, delusional. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Good morning and welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. We get to say now hello and good morning to Anthony Grant, who joins us daily to discuss the news you may have missed while scanning the morning's headlines. Tony, take it away.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Looking lovely.
Thank you. You as well.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Well, guess who's also looking lovely?
Who?
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Tell me, where? Where is he
Anyway,
is he looking so lovely?
I'd like this story from our own website, i24news.tv, which is headlined, Strong Opposition to PM Attempt to Delay Israel's Presidential Election.
Yeah, that didn't go well for him, did it?
Well, I guess it's a story in progress, but it's interesting to see how it's playing itself out in the Israeli
media. So just give some background. Netanyahu is trying to cancel or delay, either or, the presidential institution in general, and then presidential elections, which are supposed to are up around the corner in June.
Right, and coming under some opposition from his own party, apparently.
And a lot of people are citing the political motives behind his intent, and he's not really trying to do it out of for the public good or for something like that.
Right.
He just doesn't like any of the candidates.
Yeah.
You know when that happens?
Yeah, it can happen sometimes, but I think he's got a lot to pick from. But anyway, we'll see what happens in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, so it's going to get hot and heavy. That is something to watch.
Also hot and heavy, the Sultan of Brunei. The New York Post has this headline.
That was a good transition.
Yes, well, when you're talking about the sex-obsessed, and I quote, world of Brunei. Now, why is this in the news? Because Hollywood celebrities, everyone from Jay Leno to Ellen DeGeneres, Richard Branson, are boycotting the Beverly Hills Hotel in California. We talked about it, but it's escalating because the owner is the Sultan of Brunei. It's part of the Dorchester Hotel Group, and he has started implementing Sharia law in his kingdom.
In the Beverly Hills Hotel?
In Brunei.
Oh,
yeah, and Sharia law.
Sharia law in Beverly Hills is not going to.
No, it wouldn't fly. But there's a lot of issues with that, of course, in the human rights aspect. And so what the Post here has done is basically catalog the various not so Sharia-friendly excesses of the Sultan, and they talk about his brother Prince Jeffrey, who is his so-called constant companion in hedonism. He has a yacht, or had a yacht, called, and a good thing there's no FCC in Israel, called Tits.
Oh, okay.
They've got statues of him having sex with his fiancée. to the tune of $800,000. So it's like a very, very in-your-face laundry list
Contradiction
of
to Sharia
all the
law.
contradictions of Sharia law.
But Ellen
So-
DeGeneres and so forth are not going to the Beverly Hills Hotel now because of Sharia law, not because of this sex-obsessed.
No, in other words, it's a complete sort of a hypocrisy.
Right.
And you also have Kim Kardashian, who had a bridal shower planned at the hotel on Saturday, and she canceled.
Even Kim canceled.
Even Kim canceled.
Well, that's like, you can't get any lower than that.
Ah.
I'll tell Brunei, get out of L.A.
Yeah, it's a risky move now.
Brunei out of L.A. You like that?
Yeah, I like that one. Speaking of risk-taking, of course, Michael Sam has been drafted by the St. Louis Rams to become the first openly gay player in the NFL.
Right.
Now, this was a bold move on his part. Time magazine says Michael Sam risked everything and we all won.
Meaning
very
who's we?
liberal
We all
viewpoint
won,
here
yeah.
about the fact that he's open, NFL, very macho.
Yeah.
But we're also seeing now a little bit of a backlash to the fact that the reaction that he had on camera, and he kissed his boyfriend very openly. Christian Science Monitor says something like, is this what the NFL was fearing all along? The emotional kiss, is this they're afraid of this,
Right.
is homophobia.
Fearing why? Because of its image or what?
Well, the Monitor, which is basically kind of a middle of the road paper, but they're basically saying that the fact that this guy got admitted into, Michael Sam was drafted to the NFL, doesn't necessarily mean that there's no homophobia in the NFL.
Right.
And something like the video kind of went viral and it's very emotional, but
Right.
it's not exactly, the most macho image of football.
Right.
So that's not something that maybe the NFL would really like. And
Well, maybe the NFL needs to, grow up and.
well, they have. They
Fast forward to 2014.
They drafted the guy, so they have. But it can be a polarizing issue.
Almost last. He was almost the one
Almost last as well.
Which is also something that,
Yeah.
of course, people are
But
citing.
if you look at him, it looks like a football player. Like he should have been.
You have such an eye for those football players.
Oh,
Expert.
Not really. Expert on Twitter.
Yes.
You heard about the Russian diplomat Rogozin, Russia's deputy PM, who threatened to fly a bomber into Romania on Twitter.
No, I did not hear about that.
He Twitter threatened, which I think is a new word.
Yeah.
Twitter threatened to fly a bomber into Romania
Because why?
Because he was on his way back to Moscow from the pro-Russian breakaway region of Transnistria in Moldova.
Right.
Okay, a lot of syllables there. And his plane was reportedly turned away because he's been sanctioned by the U.S. over the actions of Putin in Crimea, etc. And he had to kind of detour around Romanian airspace.
So it was turned away as it was headed towards Moscow.
Apparently, had to, reroute or something.
And so in midair, he starts tweeting,
Or as soon as he got, I don't know where he actually did the tweet, there was Wi-Fi, but he basically said, okay, so Ukraine doesn't allow me to pass through again, so next time I'll fly aboard a Tu-160. Which is a very large Russian military
bomber.
aircraft.
Cold War in our faces.
It's
using Twitter. This is like the new age Cold War.
It's like one thing if Kim Kardashian tweets like that, but the Russian deputy PM.
You're shaking. You're shaking in your shoes. Yeah,
okay.
I get it.
In London, Tory MP Michael Fabricant admits to hair enhancement.
Oh, I couldn't tell. It's so. You really can't tell that he has a hair enhancement. Oh, I was about to say transplant, but
I think he's trying to compete with Boris Johnson, the mayor of London, who's
no, but it looks so natural. I mean, what?
Well, he admits to enhancement to the follicular area, but he will
follicular?
not go into any more details, quote unquote, at this stage. So
Okay.
I know it's.
What does it do for voting? I wonder.
I don't know.
No?
I know he shows that you can be blonde, British, and conservative all at the same time.
There you go.
The Pope.
Yep. He's on his way here.
I know, but before that,
first,
he has to deal with the devil. The Washington Post reports that the modern Pope gets old school on the devil. There's been a 6-day conference sponsored by the Vatican on exorcisms in Rome, and the article is saying that the Pope is very into exorcism as a way to cast out demons from people.
Okay.
Despite the fact that he's a very liberal, progressive pope, he's sort of reaching into old school Vatican
superstitions, basically.
Basically.
Wow.
And there were many clerical, religious people at this conference with all sorts of demonic tales to tell. Such as this one exorcist who said that he encountered the demon on a flight to Switzerland, or he was on a Swiss Air flight, and he said 2 lesbians were in front of him. One started to groan demonically and threw chocolates at his head.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there was some
True story.
This is the Washington Post.
I mean, Switzerland, you can pick on any country in the world.
Yeah,
Switzerland's
I
like
guess
the neutral,
you find your demons where you want,
country.
right? But
you can find demons everywhere, even in Switzerland.
even in Turkey.
Even in Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey's Prime Minister Erdogan has yet again heckled a critic, and he stormed out of a talk the other day.
Talking about a Twitter threatener.
Yeah, he's got some anger management issues. So there you go. He's maybe he could use an exorcism.
Right. Well, I'm not. That's a little touchy subject there, Anthony Grant. I'm not going to comment on that.
An ecumenical exorcism.
Yeah.
So that's happening in Turkey, and also in Turkish defense news. Turkey has nixed a missile defense deal with China. Apparently under pressure from NATO and the United States. This is reported in the South China Morning Post, which is one of the most free newspapers in China. And they talk quite openly about how China is very upset with how this played out.
Well, Turkey needs to get back its friends in the West, who it's really been ignoring, I would say, or at least shaming.
Or trying to, cut its own path. But there's a lot of money at stake here, $3.4 billion, something to that effect. And of course, why does Turkey want the missile defenses? Iran may have something to do with that.
Got it. And the Chinese are not too happy, but we'll figure that one out.
They'll make money in other ways.
Anthony Grant, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
will, of course, be here later on the show. We'll see you soon. On to our next topic. Israel's top intelligence and security brass are up in arms after yet another Newsweek article alleging that an Israeli spy hid in the vents of a Jerusalem hotel during a visit by the former U.S. Vice President Al Gore some 16 years ago. The former Mossad chief here in Israel called the spy story delusional, but the Newsweek reporter who wrote the controversial article asserts that Israel is still spying on the United States and insisted that he was after the truth and he was not trying to tarnish Israel's reputation. To hear more about it, we're joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shilev. Hi, Tal. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Let's we're going to take a look quickly at the next report, and then we'll chat.
Just when you thought U.S.-Israel relations couldn't get any tenser, the most sensitive issue between nations, that of counterintelligence, threatens to further jeopardize the two allies' special relationship. Last week, Newsweek reported on a briefing held in January before members of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees, in which American officials claimed Israel's current espionage activities in the U.S. are, quote, unrivaled and unseemly, nothing as expected from a close and dependent ally. Israeli officials told Newsweek in response it stopped all spying operations in the U.S. after Jonathan Pollard was convicted of spying for Israel in 1987.
To receive this award.
Yet the tales of devious Israeli activity are amounting, with an additional Newsweek report about an Israeli spy spotted in an air duct in former Vice President Al Gore's room. On Saturday, former IDF Intelligence Directorate Major General Amos Yadlin denied the Newsweek report, speaking on behalf of Israel's entire security forces elite.
I spoke yesterday with Meir Dagan, my colleague and head of the Mossad for many years. And he told me the same thing, only more forcefully. Israel does not spy on the United States. These are false accusations, to a certain degree, malicious ones.
These harsh claims come at a time when Israel lobbies to join the U.S. prestigious visa waiver program. So far, citizens of 38 countries are free from obtaining a visa in order to enter the U.S. Israel has been criticized for its treatment of Arab Americans wishing to enter Israel, and these latest claims of unparalleled espionage will make it even harder for Israel to benefit from the program and be considered a true friend of the U.S.
So, Tal, it's not much of a story here in Israel as much as we perhaps thought it would be, with a lot of ex-Mossad chiefs and ex-security officials are coming out and bashing it, but we haven't really heard much from the current Israeli government.
I think it's clear now already that for the past 2 weeks that we're in the middle of a media campaign. This is generated by real people, real officials that are trying to harm the relationship between Israel and the U.S. But if the first piece was like, wow, how are people talking about this? And there were very harsh statements there, off-the-record statements, we might say. It's former intelligence officers and former congressional aides that have some kind of business to close with Israel, and we'll go into the context later. But after the second story, which was full of maybe some of the details could be even, you might even say, absurd.
When a man climbing through a vent.
And talking about Israelis offering women and pot to seduce intelligence officials, and like describing Israeli defense officials inviting their American counterparts for business trips to Israel. This is definitely, we all know that Israel has one of the most sophisticated intelligence branches in the world. You would expect them to have a bit more sophisticated methods. So people understand now after the second campaign, it's only Newsweek that, by the way, we think about Newsweek as the Newsweek we all grew up upon, but it's not the same Newsweek, it's not the same owners. The Daily Beast.
Meaning, what you're saying is that there's so many different motivations for the publication of this article, except for perhaps the truth.
Exactly. Well, the truth is that there is always a tension between Israel and the U.S. regarding the spy issue since the Pollard. But the truth is, and this, you can hear Israeli defense officials swearing on this, swearing that they have a clear guidance not to spy in the U.S. And any Israeli official that goes abroad to the U.S. has a clear rule. He hears it very clear not to spy in the U.S. So this is the truth. What could happen? And this is why you don't really hear many officials reacting, except the intelligence minister, Yuval Steinitz, who said he would demand a clarification from his counterparts in the Senate and in the House. But there is a problem because there is someone trying to generate a bad vibe into the relationship, which is in a very shattered state to begin with.
In the state of affairs, a lot of names and a lot of accusations have been tossed around in the Israeli media. Some saying, yes, it's because we are very close to a Pollard deal. This is why they're trying to sabotage this. Others are looking at the peace talks and saying, yes, as you just said, we're in a very shaky relationship with the United States. Let's do this. Other people are even calling it anti-Semitism. Where would you put it?
Well, I think it's somewhere in the middle. It's clear that there is a basic problem with the pro-Israel lobby Congress activity that will continue probably to accompany us as long as it's as active and strong as it is. Because if we talk about the visa waiver program, this is generated by people who object the pro-Israel lobby activity trying to expand the visa, to ease the visa restrictions on Israeli citizens. The truth is that Israel's activities are in many cases they are hushed up by congressmen and by Congress lobbyists. So this is the truth, and it's a truth that we have to deal with. But this is the truth that will continue to bother a lot of people in the United States, and will probably continue to generate these kinds of stories. Spying and espionage is always the most sexiest stories of them all.
Dramatic headlines, but there's not much to it. Tal Shalev, thank you for joining us this morning. Coming out, South Sudan's army rebels accuse each other of breaking the ceasefire brokered by international monitors. But first, some more of this morning's headlines. And welcome back now to I-24 News Morning Edition. We begin with South Sudan. South Sudan's army and rebel forces are now accusing each other of breaking a ceasefire just hours after it came into effect yesterday. And these are charges that will surely frustrate the international mediators who had pressured both sides to stop the ethnic-fueled conflict. To hear more about it, we're joined in studio by I-24 News senior editor Ruti Sinai. Good morning, Ruti.
Good morning, yeah.
Let's see a quick recap of the events from the region, and we'll take it from there.
A statement from the rebels accused government soldiers loyal to President Salva Kiir of launching ground attacks and artillery barrages against their positions in two oil-rich northern states. While the government insisted the rebels attacked first. Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar met in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa on Friday and agreed to halt fighting within 24 hours. The two sides had agreed to a ceasefire in January, but that deal quickly fell apart and unleashed a new round of fierce fighting. Clashes were also reported around the northern oil hub of Bentiu, the Unity State capital, which has changed hands several times in recent weeks and has been described as being particularly tense. Independent aid sources in the town confirmed that they could hear fighting, but added it was impossible to say which side started fighting first. The war, which started as a personal rivalry between Kir and Machar and erupted December 15, has seen the army and communities divided along ethnic lines, pitting members of Kir's Dinka tribe against Machar's Nur. As it stands, the war has claimed thousands and possibly tens of thousands of lives, with more than 1.2 million people forced to flee their homes.
And we're also joined now from Juba, South Sudan by journalist Andrew Green. Good morning, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. Andrew is with us? Andrew, it was only a matter of hours between the signing of the agreement, the ceasefire agreement, and when the fighting started. Was there hope that it would last longer, or would you say, as a journalist monitoring the situation, it was only could only last for a few hours?
Well, what we're hearing from the field is that the rebels are accusing the government of never actually even honoring the ceasefire. They said that the shelling started about 7:30 the night before the ceasefire was supposed to go into effect. And then the other side is accused, the government is accusing the rebels of launching attacks by 6 o'clock the next morning. So really the ceasefire never actually seemed to have taken hold.
Andrew, and of course, the international mediators that were on the ground are extremely frustrated with the fighting that has erupted between the two sides. What are they saying now, the people on the ground that, of course, have been monitoring the situation for months now?
Well, I think the UN is concerned that hundreds of thousands of people are going to go without food, and they're also reporting that there is fighting in Bentiu, the capital of Unity State. I think people are very concerned that principles, President Kiir and former Vice President Riek Machar signed this agreement, that they don't necessarily have control over the forces, especially on Machar's side. So even these ceasefire agreements may not actually have that much effect, which is kind of what we were seeing yesterday when the fighting restarted.
Right. Andrew Green there in South Sudan. Thank you for joining us. With me in studio is I-24 News senior editor Ruti Sinai. Ruti, of course, the West welcomed this ceasefire deal on Friday, only to watch it crumble before their eyes. And the West were the first to recognize South Sudan, of course, as a country.
Mm-hmm. Well, poor John Kerry. Here again,
so many aspects.
Here again, he's trying to reconcile these two leaders, and he calls them up and he says, "Listen, guys, you really have to get it together and stop this fighting." They say yes, and they go to neighboring Ethiopia and they sign a deal, and as you said, 6 hours later it's no more. So yes, a lot of people have put a lot of weight behind this new country in getting it, after a very long civil war between Christians and Muslims in Sudan, and Sudan proper, not South Sudan. And everybody had high hopes for this small country. Everybody was rooting for them, both personal rivalries between Riek Machar and the president Salva Kiir, and both ethnic tensions between the Dinka and the Nur have basically succeeded in unraveling this big promise.
And you mentioned, of course, the religious and ethnic conflicts, but there's also an economic conflict as well. There's a very oil-rich region in South Sudan, and that is also, perhaps some will say, the reason the West is so invested in South Sudan, or perhaps humanitarian causes and so forth.
Yeah, I tend to be cynical most of the times. I don't think this is the case here. I think there was
meaning they've seen Darfur, they've seen other regions in Africa.
Exactly. I think there was the intention was to somehow stop this from spreading into neighboring countries. I think that might have been a more serious geopolitical rationale for Western support than the oil. I think the oil might be, or probably probably is a consideration for the rebels, for Mashar, whose headquarters is in that area, and who has been fighting to gain control of those oil fields.
And it's interesting when we do compare it to other conflicts. You say this is not only about oil. This is perhaps a pure humanitarian intent of the West, because they do look at other conflicts that have ended, even just self-determination in Kosovo that ended after years of civil war, and of course Darfur is just one of the neighboring to South Sudan. What can be done now that the fighting has just erupted after hours of an international ceasefire? The UN its hands are tied.
Yeah, well, the UN is on the ground. It's got about 8,000 and 9,000 troops there. Ban Ki-moon, personally traveled to Juba to press. Washington has slapped some sanctions on some, frozen some bank accounts of some of these leaders. The EU is talking about sanctions. If they don't want to, there's not much that can be done, and it really is a question. The other question is to what extent the president controls all the forces, because, the longer it goes on, the more there is sort of,
separatists.
Separatists and various groups, coming into the fray and stirring things up. But, they really have to put aside what is essentially their personal rivalries and work together to make this peace, the ceasefire come together, and then hold elections. This was supposed to be the next stage.
International mediation is crucial as ever. You wouldn't say okay.
I would, of course. It is crucial, but if they don't want to, nothing's going to make them sit down in the same room. Right. And one other thing we need to note, and that is that there's a fear of starvation, of famine. I mean, there's if people can't get home, about 1.5 million have been displaced. If they can't get back home before the rainy season in June and plant crops, there's going to be famine.
Extra humanitarian disasters.
Absolutely.
There. Ruti Sinai, thank you for joining me this morning. And we get to say now hello and good morning once again to our one and only Anthony Grant, who's here with What's Hot on the Web.
Well,
Anthony?
Well, you know what the answer to that question
Who's
is.
hot?
It's Conchita Wurst.
Conchita.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about her.
I know. Yes, this is true. But I want to say that we talked about Conchita weeks ago, and we said right here that she was the one to watch at Eurovision, and now, of course, she won.
Yep.
And it's, great news for bearded ladies everywhere.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, do you think it's definitely going to start a trend? I mean, the internet already went pretty viral with people dressing up as her and,
I mean, it's, I don't know. I haven't seen that, but have they started to dress up as her?
Yeah, I've seen You can Instagram, all kind of hashtags of Conchita and so forth. People are trying to copycat her. Let's see a bit of Conchita, can we?
Yeah.
Can we see some of her?
No, that isn't me. A stranger getting nearer. Who can this person be? You wouldn't know me at all today. From the fading light I fly, rise like a phoenix, out of the ashes seeking rest.
I gotta say though, the dress looks like something my grandmother would wear.
Really?
And I love my grandmother's, but yeah, it's a little bit matronly, I think,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, great voice. I mean,
would your grandmother also
she's better
go up
than
on the
Adele.
Eurovision stage with a beard and start singing?
I don't think that would be possible, but it's a great song. I mean, like I was saying to anyone who would listen, that guy or girl beats Adele anytime. I think he has got a great.
Did you watch it live?
I watched it on the internet, naturally.
But live.
Yeah, but look at what Putin said.
12 points. What did Putin say?
12 points. He slammed the whole thing as being the end of Europe.
Oh, that's what's going to bring the end of Europe.
Yeah,
not any kind of military
marching into any little area.
Regions,
but yeah, Conchita Wurst is going to be the end of everything.
Oh,
I know it's kind of.
Putin.
Come on, I mean it's kind of a spoil sport, don't you think? I don't know. I think it's a little bit over dramatic there.
Just a bit.
Injecting politics into.
It needs to be like a list of like the 100 things that will bring the end of Europe that are not Conchita Wurst. We can give you 100 other reasons why the end of Europe is right on its way.
Also, this is great. Did you see what happened in the American press? People were comparing her to Kim Kardashian. the New York Daily News said, see it cross-dressing Kim Kardashian look-alike wins Eurovision singing contest.
Nice.
I mean, Americans can be so Kardashian-oriented, you know?
I mean, everything is, that's like the scale and standard of everything.
Yeah. It's like how do you look relative to Kim Kardashian?
How rich are you relative to Kim Kardashian?
I mean,
how do you look relative to Kim Kardashian?
Yeah,
how much money do you make relative to Kim Kardashian?
Yes, how much mascara do you wear or not compared to Kim Kardashian?
Do you pluck your baby's eyebrows like Kim Kardashian does?
Yeah,
No.
It's like let the girl or guy sing. I don't know. Now let's clarify. It is a man. It's not like Dawn International from Israel who's transgender.
Right.
This is a guy in a dress with a beard, with a nice voice.
With a nice voice,
Yeah.
And
So
a nice dress. I like the dress.
Now, guess who was not wearing a dress but wearing something quite interesting? Putin.
Oh,
himself.
The end of Europe guy.
That's Putin in a hockey getup.
That's going to bring the end of Europe, I'm going to tell you. That is the end of Europe right there.
Right there. Putin, you know, he was in Sochi on Saturday to play hockey.
Right.
He, you know, he's a very athletic guy. You know, he's ridden on a horse, you know, famously without his shirt on. He's
But this time he put his shirt, but it doesn't look like there's much competition. Like he's winning and playing, but he's playing against himself.
Apparently, no, he had a little bit of support there in terms of his prowess on the ice.
Even if I play ice hockey against myself, I'm going to win.
No, but there were other people involved, just not pictured.
Oh,
but,
I don't know.
What
it
does
looks
this
like he's
tell you about Putin?
Scoring a goal and there's like no defense. So.
He's trying to score some PR points, I think.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway, looking good on the ice.
Before going to Crimea, please do stop at your local ice skating rink and play some ice hockey.
And look good for the cameras. Michael Douglas, transitioning. We haven't talked about him or his nether regions for a while, but he had some problems at his son's bar mitzvah.
Oh, what
Apparently, you know, he was, you know, that hora with the bar mitzvah?
I do know that hora.
You know, you have sort of
traditional Jewish dance.
You're like lifted up sometimes on a chair by relatives. It's a happy occasion. Well, his son Dylan was getting the bar mitzvah, and he got jostled, Michael, and he had a groin injury.
Ooh.
Apparently of
Michael did. Yeah, that hora can be, you know, brutal.
Yeah, the hora. I mean, the hora related to the Torah.
The Hora Torah it can be brutal for anyone. Do watch your body parts while dancing the Hora.
Michael Douglas, you know, I didn't actually realize his Jewish roots, so it took this story for that to come to the fore.
Well, you need to be kicked in the groin to remind yourself of your Jewish roots sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
No more bar mitzvahs for Michael Douglas.
No, not in the near future. Maybe he needs to relax on a yacht.
I do.
Okay. Look at those lovely pictures. Cannes Film Festival is coming down the pike quite soon, and so the Hollywood Reporter is giving tips for those who want to recover from Cannes. You can plan a yacht trip, even if you're not a billionaire.
Okay,
and so
let's go. That sounds easy.
Talk about some hot
do?
Mediterranean destinations. You need to know someone who owns a boat like that, which would be helpful. You can charter one and go. And
Conchita Wurst will be your yacht, you know, entertainment.
Book Conchita to serenade you as you go to Marseille or Mallorca.
You be a billionaire for that. That sounds like everyone's, you know, everlasting.
You could take a yacht from Jaffa Port here and go off to go straight to Cannes or Amalfi.
We'll do it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Memo to boss. We're going to Cannes.
In a yacht with Conchita Wurst.
With Conchita Wurst and Putin.
Yeah.
Opposite suites. The Wall Street Journal has a great story on a more serious note about this crazy museum, which is on the travel map in Myanmar, formerly Burma. It's Just Say No, Myanmar's eccentric anti-drugs museum. Who knew that Myanmar had the world's second highest rate of opium production in the world after Afghanistan?
So what do you do with this eccentric anti-drug museum?
This basically is designed to scare kids into not using drugs. And they have these crazy dioramas of people suffering from drug use. They've got a theme park ride complete with a haunted house and a severed hand, a fake severed hand.
A haunted house? Sounds like an entertainment, like, you know.
I think it's designed to freak people out.
So after you're freaked out, does it say just don't do drugs, or you're just like freaked out in general about witches? I
think the idea is that you're just so freaked out from the experience that you don't want to go near the opium fields in Myanmar, formerly Burma.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way to combat drugs, but maybe it works. So
maybe. I mean,
all those rehab farms in the middle of nowhere in the United States where Lindsay Lohan goes, maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, she admitted
They should have museums like that in the States, though, shouldn't they? It'd be nice to see that.
Well, that will boost Myanmar's tourism if we can send all the. That's a good idea.
Yeah, on charter flights.
Yeah,
it'd be kind of cool. In the meantime, in Florida news, remember Ellen Nordegren? Tiger Woods' ex,
of course,
who famously chased him out of the house with a golf club when she realized he had 15 mistresses. It was,
right.
It was when she heard about the 15th that she tried to swing at him with the golf club. She graduated from college.
Nice. Go Ellen Woods.
Good for her.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for all of us.
Yeah.
Anthony Grant, thank you for joining us. We're going to be back after the headlines with more from I-24 News Morning Edition. We'll see you soon. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. We're now joined in studio by the I-24 News culture correspondent, Michal Divon. Hi, Michal. Good morning.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
I'm good. You're here to talk about wearable technology, so fashion and technology.
We're not talking about culture today. I guess you could see it as fashion. Yeah. I guess it's kind of cultural, but really I think it's the future, and it's kind of what we all need to know about if we want to be able to interact with our kids, for instance.
But it's still fashionable.
It will be fashionable. Today It's a little clumsy.
Okay,
like
explain.
Google Glass, and I'll explain. So actually today is a great day to be talking about this because there's the first Israeli wearable technology conference taking place at the Azrieli Towers today.
Here in Tel Aviv.
Here in Tel Aviv, which will be featuring all kinds of new devices which offer different technologies like the Google Glass, which made a lot of buzz in the past year. And this is all kind of a new reality that we're being faced with, an augmented reality. So for instance, people will be able to one day use their phones without even taking it out of their pocket. There'll be a screen projected, and you'll do everything using a certain glass that you see through. So today it's the Google Glass, which looks very clumsy, but one day it'll look like normal glasses. Like right now, I'm wearing glasses, but actually I see my entire computer screen in front of us.
Right.
And I think we can show a little demonstration.
Yeah, we're showing a bit of demonstrations in back of you here on our screens. This is of the headphone that you can actually, a wearable headphone, and you can, of course, as you said, they're glasses that you can read, but yet see much more than just the text in front of you.
Right, and actually there's a video, there's a company, Meta, which created apparently what is like 15 times better than Google Glass. It's called the wearable computing, which is the Space Glass. There's like a 1-minute video of it. I think we should show so that everyone knows what we're talking about. Because,
let's see it.
Worth 100 words.
And have...
Michal, Chazran. So that's obviously kind of, they're trying to look at a way to put on glasses and make them fashionable. This is obviously a very promotional kind of video.
This is promotional, exactly. And if we saw more of it, you'd start seeing, how actually computers and researchers are making these projections of technologies onto spaces. So it's creating this entire augmented reality. And what's going to be in today's conference, and what can we expect from 2014 is basically an emergence of wearable computing startups and devices which can track different activities. For example, what you can expect today in the conference. LifeBeam is an Israeli startup which offers a helmet that can track kind of how your health is doing, how your heartbeat is. There'll be shirts which will.
So it's also integrating healthcare into this whole.
Exactly. So the whole issue of healthcare with these technologies is really allowing the consumer and the doctor to know a lot more because it can track over time. All your health habits. It can, during a run, it can kind of alert you if your heartbeat is getting too high. Over time, it can kind of create algorithms of your health, and then if you're developing a disease or getting sick, it can let you know.
Right.
And then there are devices for kind of everyday fun.
We've seen it, like the sleeping devices, monitoring your sleep, monitoring when you're dreaming.
I want to wake up, when my sleep cycle is, most
finished.
ready for it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there are all kinds of these different devices. Other things we can.
The big question, of course, is when does this technology leave the laboratory in this like geeky kind of scene and make it something that we can all just, wear and walk around and feel proud that we're wearing a Google Glass?
Well, that's the thing. A a lot of these companies are still in kind of the research and development stage. And Google Glass, for instance, cost $1,500. So it's not exactly affordable to most of us. But apparently this is the future, and this is definitely what's going to dominate very soon. How we see things and how this can also improve, our health. I'd love to show another video which will show for visually impaired. There's a device called Orcam, which actually
which was bought recently.
And it's able to kind of direct the blind with audio. So this was like an example of how it can change your life. There's Rewalk, which allows handicaps to walk again. This was featured on Glee. So there are all these new devices which they can be preventive in healthcare. They can assist people. They can improve people's lives in ways that haven't been done before. And of course, it's cool and geeky. So let's show.
Let's see another video of the wearable technology, which hopefully is going to maybe Celine and Chanel will take it into their next spring summer 2015
and make it fashionable.
Make it fashionable, and perhaps let's take a look.
At this party, every name is bold. It wasn't clear which stood taller, the Corinthian columns of the New York State Supreme Court or the towering figures of New York society who mingled beneath them at the kickoff to the 12th annual Tribeca Film Festival on Tuesday night.
I'm Liat, I'm visually impaired, and I'm going to show you how the Orcam device changed my life. With Orcam, I can find things easily.
Ocean Spray Cranberry Juice. Alpro Vanilla Soy Milk.
Looks like we have to go shopping.
A lot of their, subliminal advertising there, but we'll ignore that for now. It is kind of cool, but it's still, as you say, very fringe, very on the outskirts, hasn't really...
It's being developed. What's amazing, and the reason this is being held in Israel, because there are so many startups. I mean, we all know Startup Nation, and in Israel every year 500 startups are being funded by venture capitalists. Actually, the crowdfunding sources have allowed so many more startups to merge into the field, but this is really the future, and this is something that I think we should all kind of tap into. Today is Israel's...
I would spend some money on wearables. I would donate on Kickstarter and so forth if I knew that it was something that could actually help.
It's something that can help, and it's cool. And, I think this is definitely something that will be embedded whether we like it or not. Today in the U.S., 1 in 10 users uses tracking devices, whether it's like a Nike chip in your shoe, whether it's a wristband. So this is the future also for lifestyle, but definitely health, which is something much more important for us.
Nice. Michal Divon, from the very, very high-tech to the very low-tech. We're going to be talking about the Eurovision right now. We're joined in studio by Channel 10 culture correspondent Michal Lieberman. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't burst your bubble.
Low-tech.
I know you wait for this
That's
time
what
of year.
I'm here for. No, but listen, it's the best show in town. It's the best show in the continent, the Eurovision, I think.
Right, but it's only really known in the continent. You go to the States, the Eurovision, it's like, with dinosaurs.
Well, now with the bearded lady who won, everybody's talking about the bearded lady. Yeah. Exactly.
How do you get that?
But what's amazing to me in the Eurovision is that it's the most bizarre show, and it's being run by the governments. So, it's public people who work in public positions. Yeah. They are the ones making the decision to, in France, for example, to bring a group that will stand on stage, will jump up and down and scream, "I want to have a mustache." If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on YouTube, look for France Eurovision 2014. Here they are. Yeah. Their song is called Mustache.
Yeah,
they didn't bring a bearded lady. They're just called the Mustache. And that's something that public officials decided that will...
in the background of mustaches.
Exactly. So Israel didn't get into the competition, and I think we should see that as a compliment.
Yeah. So what is the special formula or the secret ingredient of getting into the competition and winning it?
Just over the top, drag queen-like, or not drag, just drag queen. Just be a drag queen.
Okay, so let's
just be
Let's compare.
We know Dana International,
Right, yeah,
1998.
But she really broke so many barriers and glass ceilings. Not only because of the way she looked, but what she said. She had a message coming forth. Does Conchita have that same message?
I think Conchita has that message, yeah, because she took the time after the win and she said, this is for everybody who believes in love, peace, and a future of understanding and tolerance. And, it's a man, actually, although she'd like to be regarded to as it.
Not a male, not a female.
Yeah, not a male, not a female, but it's a man. And the beard itself, it's fake because he doesn't really have a beard.
Right.
So
it's a statement of its own.
It's a statement of I'm a man and I'm a woman inside one body and I want to be accepted like that. Right. So yeah, she does have a message. And we have to consider the fact that the audience that watches the Eurovision, it's usually
primarily
LGBT audience. They're the ones who adore the shows. So it really talks to them. But there's also a political message here. In the countries that voted for Conchita, it also goes to show Vladimir Putin that they're against his anti-LGBT movement and actions. And also no country from West Europe voted for Russia. Yes, everybody thought that Ukraine will win because they wanted to support Ukraine in front of Russia. Well, they didn't win, but still Putin was like the bad guy of the Eurovision. And you can see Russia also reacting to this win. The deputy of the Russian prime minister wrote on his Twitter account yesterday that this is the future of Europe, a bearded lady. And also
Putin said it's the end of Europe, so...
Yes, and another political extremist, right-wing extremist from Russia said that Europe has become wild and that they shouldn't have let Austria off the Soviet regime. So yeah, it's becoming...
it's funny because every year nobody really wants to talk about it, and then when it does come up, it brings up all these political nightmares from the Cold War era, such as
exactly.
This. And of course, the LGBT communities around the world try to get back at whoever's been quite rude to them over the years.
But it's fun, I have to say.
I
watched it, and I recommend everybody to just go on the Eurovision TV website, invite a few friends over, and just do a Eurovision party all over again. It's great.
Which is what we do.
And watch Romania's song.
Romania? Why? What was so special about that?
It's a Miracle, and there's a guy coming out of a circled piano, and he's playing on a circle piano. You just have to watch it. Nice. I can't even explain.
I mean, it seems like anyone that was quote unquote mainstream or normcore, as the movement likes to say.
Yeah, that
nobody cares anymore.
No, yeah, you have to be. But I mean, the sad thing about this whole thing is that the Eurovision used to be a place where every country showed something that is significant and special to that place and specific. It was a national celebration for every country. Now, because of globalization, all songs have to be in English so everybody can understand, and it doesn't look like it represents a country. It represents just the pop culture and MTV culture. It does, or rave culture. It doesn't really represent the country that it's coming from.
Is there any kind of weight on the musical significance of the song? Do people actually say that was actually a good song, or is it just really the show?
What?
Yeah, sorry, that was so 1999.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
No, who cares? It's just about the show.
Conchita song, we'll be hearing it now and there. I mean, it might be bought up for, who knows, a James Bond movie.
Exactly. I think all songs kind of sound the same. It's just, it's Lady Gaga, but just Lady Gaga-ish. Yeah, that's how everything sounds
I guess it doesn't get better than that. Exactly. Well, quickly, I want to talk about all the TV shows that have been canceled or renewed for a new season. And it's interesting when you try to categorize which has been boosted up for another season, which has been canceled. It says a lot about today's TV industry.
Exactly, and you look at the TV networks in America, and they're just being neurotic about canceling and bringing shows back because there's a dissonance between shows that create buzz and shows that really bring the ratings and are really profitable.
Right.
So you talk about Community, for example. It's a comedy show. People love it. It got great reviews, and it has a great crowd of fans.
Right.
But
mostly on social networks, though.
Mostly on social networks, exactly. The kind of people that watch Community are not the people who are loyal enough to really sit down every week and turn on the TV. They'll download it, they'll watch it later, so they're not bringing the ratings.
And hence the TV ratings are really not representative of what actually happens on the ground.
Exactly. So that's why the TV networks have to really rethink the whole profitable way to make good television, because the shows that
measure the ones that are doing well.
Exactly. I'll tell you what, the shows that are stable and successful and are profitable in old school ways, bringing the ratings on the specific time slot, they're the police dramas, Bones, for example.
Right.
So they have an audience, but it's an older audience, and it's not the kind of audience that will talk about the show in social media and react to it. So it's kind of a passive audience.
Right.
And that kind of audience will not exist for much longer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The bearer of bad news.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So all the new shows that there are going to be a few new shows. Maybe the TV executives should take a look, maybe on Facebook and other social networks to see.
Exactly. I mean,
who's
they
talking
do,
about what.
but they still have nothing to do with this data. The thing is that, we do have Netflix that we saw with the Arrested Development, for example.
Yeah.
It's a show that got canceled by the network, but it had such a loyal and enthusiastic audience, so Netflix brought it back. And we can see that Netflix...
it's like this middleman. It's like, working between the TV executives and their high towers and the people.
Exactly, because they're not working on ratings, so they have members who pay a monthly fee, so they can bring them good quality, good shows, and they have the time to test those shows and see if they work.
In the people. That's who's watching TV. Chen Lieberman, Channel 10 culture correspondent, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Michal
you.
Yvonne, thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more I-24 News Morning Edition. Next up are the headlines.